Hi there, this is a 2019 Subaru Crosstrek, and I just wanted to show you how I wired up my underseat sub, so that way you could do it easier than some of the other ways that I've seen on YouTube. They're very helpful, but I just found this way to be a bit easier. All right, so the first thing I did differently than most people is a lot of people went through here and came up through the wheel well and took all that stuff off. I didn't actually do that. I actually went a different way. I went through the main grommet, which is right down there, and oh man, there you can kind of see it right there through there. So that's the main grommet, and that's the main place that all the cabling comes right through. Right there, and I was able to actually shove a fish tape right through and feed it right through and come up here to my battery for the fuse connection. And where that grommet comes out on the other side is down under here. I took a knife and I just cut a little slit, and that's the other end of where the grommet comes through, and that's also where the main wiring connections come through for the Crosstrek. So I literally just use the same connection that Toyota uses, and you could just cut a little slit in it just like I did, and then just shove the fish tape through. I used a 20-foot fish tape. I'll show it to you in 1 second here. I used a 20-foot fish tape, like this little guy right here. I have an electrician background, so kind of in the story there, and you can just pull that out and whatnot. I ran the power cable across and over underneath here, and then I took off this one side piece here that pops off really easily. Everything here just pops off. This all just pops right off. And I actually, instead of doing the connection that most other people do, I actually did a rear door speaker connection, which we see right here. And to find out which was the door speaker wire, I actually popped off the door and did the continuity check for the positive and the negative. And I used a meter for that. I used an electrical meter for the positive and the negative. I haven't covered this up yet, but there's actually a little slit down on the carpet that comes from the factory there. So the wires can actually just tuck in there quite nicely. Kind of like that. You can just kind of tuck them in through right there. And that's a factory little slit in the floor there. So I didn't even cut that slit. The one thing I did is I did cut the blue and the white wire here out of this passenger rear. And it turned out, in my case, that white was the positive and blue was the negative, and I used what's called a Wago connector, which you can reconnect very easily. So they just snap closed. So they're just like little connectors that just kind of pop open like that, and then when you're done using them, you just snap them shut right like that. I thought I was going to need all 3 connections, but I didn't need them actually, so I ended up using 2 and putting the other small wires together. Again, the white was the positive for my door speaker, and the blue was the negative for my door speaker. For the negative, I got that right here. So if we pop up this little piece of Velcro here, there actually already was a grommet a ground connection right there. I just lifted that bolt off right there, and then that was my negative for my subwoofer. So then I ran my negative underneath the seat. My positive came through. I used the fish tape again to pull it up along the doorway there. You can pull those little snaps up quite easily. So that's for the positive power. And then I brought both connections to the door there. And I went with the Serv and Vega. In this case, I went with the high side. I didn't use the lower outputs. I only used the high level. In this case, the black line was the negative. The white wire with no black line was the positive, and I just twisted the left and the right together. So obviously you lose your left-right balance, I think that is. Anyway, I hope this helps.